Today, we're going to be looking at the different levels of organization within our multicellular organisms. So, the learning attention for today is that I want you to be able to understand that multicellular organisms have a hierarchical structure of organization of cells, tissues, organs, and systems. Okay, so you need to know this. So, we've just finished talking about our specialized cells, and we know that this is the most specific level of organization within our body. But I just want you to have a stop and a think about what are some of the other levels that you may remember. So, hopefully, one of the levels you remember are our tissues. So, this is when a group of similar cells that have the same function or similar function come together to form tissue. Now, there are four main types of tissue within our human body. The first one is our muscle tissue. So there are three types of muscle tissue. So these are skeletal, which is attached to our skeleton. So muscles attached to our skeleton, like biceps, triceps, things like that. Cardiac, of course, are found in the walls of our heart, and they have an involuntary movement. So I want you to think about why would that have an involuntary movement? And then finally, the last one are our smooth muscle tissue. So these are for our hollow visceral organs such as our liver, pancreas, and intestines. And of course, muscle tissue are all involved in movement. The second type is our epithelial tissue. So, of course, we've got here a bunch of epithelial cells. And like we said before, they're different layers of cells coming up and layering on top of each other. And these all cover our organs and our body and everything. So, when we say the skin is the biggest tissue in our body, it is no lie at all. It is definitely the biggest tissue and organ of our body. The next one is our nervous tissue. So, this is mostly located in the nervous system and the brain, and this allows for tissues to transmit impulses all around our body. And then our final type of tissue here is connective tissue. So, this connects, supports, binds, or separates other tissues or organs. Our connective tissue is broken down into four more types, which is our blood, bones, cartilage, and other connective tissue as well. These are our four main types of tissues. So, of course, when our different tissues come together, they form ourselves some organs. So, we can see here we've got a pair of lungs, we've got a heart, and we've got bones here. So, we can say an organ is classified as a distinct structure made up of two or more tissue types. So, our organ systems then are, of course, a group of organs that come together to perform major functions. And I want you to think about, well, how many organ systems do you think that we have? And it may or may not surprise you, but we actually have 11 types of organ systems, and here they are here. So you might be counting and say that's 12. Well, think you either, or most people either have a male reproductive system or a female reproductive system. So that would be the 11, not 12. So we've got ourselves our digestive system, the muscular system, the integumentary system. We've got ourselves our lymphatic system, endocrine system, nervous system, skeletal, the male and female reproductive systems, respiratory system, urinary system, and circulatory system. And of course, as we know, every single one of these systems are working together to keep our bodies alive. Okay, so they're all there and they have very specific functions that work together to make our body run. So we have here just some, I guess, a bigger scheme of the different structures of organizations. So of course, we're kind of mainly focusing on this blue one here. Maybe not more so the organelles, though that kind of comes along with the cells themselves. But if we think even smaller than cells and organelles, we've got our atoms that make molecules and then make organelles to cells, tissues, organs, organ systems. And then we think about, well, together those organ systems combine to create one living organism. Okay, so whether that be an ant, We've got ourselves an apple here, flower, and then even further on, if we have many of the same types of organisms, we make a population. Different populations coming together make a community, and then a community, also different communities come together to form an ecosystem, and an ecosystem or many ecosystems would form together to create a biome. So, just a bit of a little insight into the many levels of our organization, but like I said, we're only focusing on our blue ones here. So it isn't just ourselves as people or as, I guess, animals that have different levels of organization. It's also important to know that plants do have their own levels of organization. So, yes, that does mean that they've got their own tissues. So they've got a dermal, kind of similar, I guess you could say, to our skin. It covers the entire plant itself. It's kind of like a protective layer. So they got a vascular system. I think about cardiovascular, kind of comparing it to the vascular system of plants, in charge of transporting water and nutrients around the body. And then we've also got some ground tissue here as well. So that's where photosynthesis occurs, and it supports matrix and storage too. So, of course, that means that that tissue comes together and they create organs. So, we've got the organs of a plant would be, say, their leaves, the stem, roots, and if they are a flowering plant, then maybe it's flowers as well. So, knowing that flowers are kind of like the reproductive part of our plant species here. So, of course, then these organs combine together to make our organ system. So, we have our shoot system, right? The bit that is above the ground. And, like I said before, the flowering part of our plant is, in fact, its reproductive system. And then below the ground level is our root system. So that would definitely be there, in charge of probably extracting nutrients and water from the ground down here, as well as making sure that that plant is structurally okay, making sure that it's in the ground, it's not going to lift off and fly away if the wind starts blowing. So, just a bit of a quick recap and review. We need to know that all cells in the body are genetically identical. Okay, we went through that when we went through specialization of cells, but we found out that the genes are turned on and off. Okay, so we look at the gene expression that is causing our genes to be expressed. Specialized cells have a structure that helps their function. So, of course, we're looking at like sperm cells have a specific structure, red blood cells have a specific structure. And these specialized cells come together, and that's what forming our tissues, which then form our organs, which then finally form our organ systems within an organism. So, with organ systems, these are interdependent, so not independent, interdependent, meaning they must all work together to ensure the survival of an organism, right? So, thinking about our circulatory system, it carries oxygen which was extracted from the air by the respiratory system. Okay, so those are just two different examples of organ systems working together to ensure the survival of a living organism. So, unfortunately, lifestyle choices can influence organs and systems. So, these can either be positive or they can be negative, which can result in non infectious disease, but it can also cause or make you at high risk of infectious disease, as we know. So, for example, exercise, so it does lower the risk of cardiovascular illness, but of course, it can lead to muscle soreness and injury. So, we can say that the effects of exercise is a positive thing, definitely. But unfortunately, if you are accident prone or you just happen to suffer an injury, then of course, you are doing damage to another different system depending on where that injury is. So, we're going to go into more detail about looking at lifestyle choices and how these impact and influence our organs and their systems.